It's impressive just how great A Quiet Place Day One is. Not that the first two Quiet Place movies weren't good, but this spin-off / prequel introduces new characters in a new setting that successfully elevates both the tension and the emotional impact of the nearly dialogue-free horror universe that John Krasinski established. And the result is the series' best movie to date. Now that we've seen two movies of people having to stay very quiet, you might think they've run out of tricks, but I think moving it to the big city does add a lot because there's so many more things that can make noise. If you're looking for this movie to add to the lore of A Quiet Place, it's not really doing that. There's a little bit, we get a little more information on these creatures, but it's really just telling a human story in the middle of this scenario. It's really just saying, here's what's happening to these characters as this terrible thing that we already know about is happening. Our main character this time out is Lupita Nyong'o's Samira, who's in town on a day trip during a time of personal crisis. As fate would have it, she's not going to be catching her bus home that afternoon though, due to the nightmarish creatures who show up and, mercilessly wipe out any humans that they hear in their vicinity. Nyong'o is a proven talent. She has an Oscar for a reason. And yet, maybe because she's only made a handful of movies since her breakout performance in 12 Years a Slave, every new role that she plays feels like a reminder of just what a terrific actor she is, and how effortlessly she can hold the screen. The opening scenes of A Quiet Place Day One establish what Samira's life is like and the impulsive hostility that she's sometimes capable of. It's an efficient explanation of what causes her behavior, but it's Nyong'o's performance that does the real heavy lifting here of quickly connecting us to her, so that we're invested even before the world starts ending. As the survivors of the aliens' initial attack process just what happened and just how quiet they need to be to avoid detection, Samira finds a new focus. She knows exactly where in the city she wants to travel. Her reasoning becomes clear as time goes on, and by that point, writer-director Michael Sarnoski, taking over for Krasinski, has fully immersed us in this story, grounding an outrageous premise and a relatable emotional core. The other Quiet Place movies have powerful and compassionate moments of their own, but Day One manages to dig deeper. In a film that only sparingly uses dialogue, Sarnoski and his talented cast managed to convey a lot through brief yet meaningful glances and small observations. The prequel underlines the awful and nearly impossible plight of its protagonists. Could you truly stay silent while you have to move fast, or if you were in terrible pain, or if you were just plain terrified? There are several wrenching moments throughout that demonstrate just what an ordeal this would be, and why so many would not survive it. And this is especially true when Samira meets British law student Eric, played by Joseph Quinn. He's barely holding it together and latches on to Samira, sheepishly following her whether she likes it or not. And their dynamic adds much more heart to Day One. We see how these two rapidly forge a real connection, even though they can rarely speak to one another. Quinn is wonderful at displaying Eric's sweetness and his vulnerability through his actions, rather than any big monologue, and he proves to be the perfect scene partner for Nyong'o. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time talking about the emotional components of A Quiet Place Day One, so I should also note, this movie is truly scary and it's often intense as hell. It gets an extra jolt in IMAX, where the sound design genuinely made me feel like we were in the middle of a city under siege at points. There are terrific scenes throughout that ratchet up the tension, such as when our heroes must travel through a flooded subway tunnel, and when the aliens attack, it's brutal and memorable. This is one of the harder-edged PG-13 films in recent memory. Sarnoski gets a lot of visual mileage out of the creatures swarming the streets of New York or scurrying across skyscrapers, which is especially impressive considering how many other monster movies have used this city as their backdrop. There's a genuine dread that sells this as a believable look at how people would react to a situation so beyond comprehension and so out of their control. Day One is mainly a two-hander between Nyong'o and Quinn, though Alex Wolff, who worked with Sarnoski on Pig, does good work in a smaller role. Djimon Hounsou also pops up to reprise his role as Henry from A Quiet Place Part 2, the only real attempt to establish more connective tissue to the larger Quiet Place franchise. It's fan service, but to the film's credit, there isn't any eye-rolling foreshadowing of what Henry's future holds. You can absolutely enjoy Day One without any prior knowledge of A Quiet Place. Now there's one other significant character.
You can't have a cat in here.
It's a service cat.
Frodo, Samira's therapy cat. As a cat lover, I was nervous for Frodo from the get-go. After all, this is a film series that kicks off with the death of a young boy. And I won't say whether Frodo makes it out alive or not, but I will say that the two cats playing him, Nico and Schnitzel, give excellent performances. Academy, take note. Granted, the extent to which Frodo never meows or cries out, no matter what is occurring around him, requires a tremendous suspension of disbelief. Look, I have cats and they truly will not shut up when they're hungry, but Frodo is just built different, okay? A Quiet Place Day One shows that the horror franchise can thrive without its core characters and can go even further in terms of how impactful its stories can be. Day One combines expertly done moments of terror and tension, combined with a story about two people it's easy to care for, as we watch them forge a relatable human connection while trying to evade freaky alien monsters with really strong hearing. It's both the best Quiet Place movie to date, and it's one of the best movies I've seen in 2024. For more movie reviews, check out what we thought of Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1, and Inside Out 2, and for everything else, stick with IGN.